Alright, so hey guys, so welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to go over the 3 frames that I believe are the best for soloing stuff. Now I know some of you might be asking, well, why would you want to solo stuff in a co-op oriented game? And there's many reasons. Maybe your internet is not the best, so you don't want to lag, or you don't accidentally want to be chosen as the host and make everyone else lag. Or maybe you just like to take things a little bit slower as opposed to what a lot of people do, which is just go and finish things as fast as possible. Or maybe you just get fed up with host migration ruining your runs. Or, and this is as good of a reason as any, you just like to play solo. That's it. So if you're one of those people that prefers to play solo, I'm going to show you 3 frames that I absolutely adore when it comes to solo play. So number 1 surprises absolutely no one. It is the almighty Inaros. Inaros is straight up the beefiest passive tank in the game. Because once you get a solid build going, you can face tank even some of the biggest boss fights like the Profit Taker, and you will not die. The downside with Inaros is that he's kind of limited to his weapon, so he's not great when it comes to secondary objective like defense, because all you can really do when it comes to defense is just try to kill the things that are trying to kill your thing before they kill your thing. And he's also pretty limited when it comes to massive tiled-wide AoE, because none of the weapons can really compete with what Warframe abilities can do. Now the build I like to run on Inaros is very expensive, and it's also heavily personalized, which is not surprising for a frame that I mostly play solo with. But don't worry, you don't have to run Umbral mods and Adaptation and Prime Vigor and Arcane Grace to get an Inaros setup going. All you need is pretty much just this. You need Vitality, so you get some extra health, Steel Fiber, so you get a ton of effective health, and Rage, so that you're constantly generating energy as you're taking damage, so you can sustain your health infinitely with finishers. And speaking about finishers, a really good way to heal yourself all the time basically with Inaros is to simply run a dagger with the Covert Lethality mod. This synergizes really well with the Desiccation, his first ability, which opens enemies up to finishers, and his passive that restores a percentage of his health whenever he kills an enemy with a finisher. Because what this mod does is it will one-shot anything as long as you can get a finisher on it. So what we have here is a frame that has an extraordinary amount of effective health, giving you a massive buffer where you can react before dying. We have a frame that has a decent amount of crowd control that you can fire off on demand, especially if you're running Rage and or Hunter Adrenaline. And if you include a dagger with Covert Lethality, you also get infinite healing and infinite damage, assuming the enemies you're fighting can be opened up to finishers. And you can get all of this going with just 3 mods on the frame and 1 mod on a dagger. It's of course a lot better if you get all the big boy mods that I'm using, but it's still pretty good even if you're starting out. So the best overall frame, the most versatile one for soloing, is definitely Inaros. But what if you want to do a lot of AoE damage, one of those areas where Inaros kind of comes short? Well, that's where we introduce Saryn, the undisputed queen of soloing things such as Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. And the reason why I chose Saryn and why she's basically the only frame that I run Elite Sanctuary Onslaught with, if I want to get anywhere that is that her damage scales so well with so little investment. You have a lot of space left over for defensive purposes, and that's what you need if you want to get anywhere in high-end content. Because surprise surprise, if you're playing solo, everything is shooting at you and you have no one to revive you, so if you want to get anywhere, you just have to survive. Now the build I'm running is once again pretty expensive because I've been playing this game for many years and I've acquired many things, but if you're just starting out, you can do something a little bit cheaper by using the standard version of Vitality, Steel Fiber and Intensify, and either use no arcanes whatsoever or just some cheaper arcanes that you can get from the Terra list. Just make sure you put in as much range as possible while still squeezing in at least a little bit of duration and ideally some efficiency, especially if you're not running the Xenodic Focus School. And this one is kind of counterintuitive, don't add too much power strength to this. I ideally like to sit at around 100% power strength, but if you go down to 90, 80, maybe 75, it's not that big of a deal. Because if you add too much power strength here, your spores are going to be doing too much damage and they will kill their targets before you can comfortably spread them around, so you will end up casting spores over and over again to refresh them, and you will just run yourself out of energy all the time. Though this of course heavily depends on what level of content you're doing. I personally found that for Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, 80, 90, 100% power strength is ideal. And finally, one thing I would definitely recommend you pair up with Saryn, especially if you don't have Arcane Grace or any other way of healing yourself, is to run a melee weapon that has wide sweeping attack, something like, my Zol, which is a heavy blade, and use healing return on it. So as I said already, I personally like to run a heavy blade with the Tempo Royale stance, which has wide sweeping attacks that hits a lot of enemies all the time, and I'm running it with healing return. And what this mod does is it heals you for a set amount based on the mod rank, for each status effect you have on every enemy you hit. And this is just amazing with Saryn, especially with the build we're using, because the enemies are going to have at least one status effect on them at all times, sometimes even two. So if you're running low on health, all you have to do is just slam into a group of enemies and your health is going to shoot back up. I actually use this all the time nowadays just to spread my spores around, and this is the only mod that's kind of set in stone. Everything else can be customized to your own liking. Now the gameplay here is extremely straightforward. You want to keep your Toxic Lash active at all times. If your spores run out, throw them on an enemy, melee them a couple of times, then you miasma when you see fit, and just slap things around with your melee weapon to heal yourself and to spread the spores further. If you do that well enough, you can easily fly through 8 waves of Elite Sanctuary Onslaught and get all the rewards from it. But that still doesn't fix the defense problem that we're having solo right now, because while she's better at killing all the things before they destroy your thing than Inaros, what if you really need to defend something? Well, that's where Gara comes in. Gara is the best frame for defending things while also being tanky and doing a stupendous amounts of damage in a relatively small area. She's pretty much the only frame that I do Kuva survival with, because she's extremely tanky, so she can take all the damage the Grineer are throwing my way, she can sustain life support thanks to all the damage she's doing with Splinter Storm, and she can protect the Kuva harvesters with Mass Vitrify. Now when it comes to building Gara, I would generally recommend a quality build where you have all positive stats. I wouldn't go negative with any of them, but it very much depends on you, because what we're going to be doing is running a combo where we put on Splinter Storm, and when it's about to run out, we're going to cast Mass Vitrify, which is going to refresh the duration of Splinter Storm, then we're gonna run out of Mass Vitrify and hit it with Shattered Lash to add that damage to our Splinter Storm. This is what you have to play around with and figure out what kind of stats work for you. If you feel like Splinter Storm is running out too soon, you add duration. If you feel like you're not getting enough energy between each combo and you're running out, you add efficiency. If you feel like your Splinter Storm isn't covering a large enough area, you want to add power range, and then you at least want to add intensify for power strain to cap the damage reduction on Splinter Storm to 90%, but you might want to add more if you feel like your Mass Vitrify wall is breaking too often, because adding power strength will give it more health. Also, if you don't have Arcane Grace and you don't want to compromise your melee stat state with healing return, one thing you can do is use the Mending Splinters augment, which will heal you a little bit while you have Splinter Storm on you. And speaking about stat stakes, this is where the majority of your damage is gonna come from, because it scales your Shattered Lash and the Mass Vitrify explosion, which adds more damage to your Splinter Storm. But you want to be a little bit careful about what you put on the melee weapon, because not everything is gonna scale that damage. So what does scale it is base damage, so Pressure Point and Spoiled Strike, then either puncture damage if you're tapping Shattered Lash, or slash damage if you're holding it down, hence Sundering Strike and Rendering Strike. And finally, there are elemental mods, so you want to run all 4 of the 90% elementals, ideally with the primed version of Fever Strike. Also, you can actually scale this further, beyond ludicrousness even, with Rivens, but they either have to have base damage, puncture or slash damage, or elemental damage. So what you want to do, once again, is simply cast Splinter Storm so that you don't die first and foremost. Once Splinter Storm is running out, you want to cast Mass Vitrify, run out of Mass Vitrify, it doesn't work if you're standing inside, and hit it with Shattered Lash, which is going to add the explosion damage to your Splinter Storm. And you really want to make sure that you refresh it every time it's running out, because if it runs out, you will lose all the damage you stored. Though it's not as big of a deal if you have the build really juiced up, because if you really juice this build up and you have a good stat stake, you're going to be doing hundreds of thousands of damage within minutes. So play around with it a little bit and adjust some stats here and there so that you can comfortably sustain it without thinking about it too much. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the 3 frames that I absolutely adore soloing with. I do use Inaros most of the time because he's just so versatile, but if I do need to do a lot of tile set wide damage like in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, I will take Saryn, and if I have to defend something as well, I will probably take Gara. And I think I've been rambling for long enough, so I thank you very much for watching. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video and it was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.